Everyone kneel before Null. The Marvel baddie is making a big splash over the pages of Marvel Comics, and the recent storyline regarding the god of the symbiotes has confirmed what we all feared, that Null is indeed the strongest villain in the Marvel Universe. What does this mean for the MCU? It might be a ways down the line, but we're in need of a new cosmic villain now that Thanos is gonzos, and we think Null could be a great contender for the next big bad of the MCU. His inclusion could even lead to the creation of the Young Avengers. How, you ask? Well, let's get into it right now and find out. If you don't know Null's name, trust us, he's the kind of guy that's worth knowing. And we use the term guy a little loosely because he's actually a primordial god whose existence predates the universe itself. What do you call that sort of thing? Dude? Bro? Jury's still out on that one. But all we know is that before there was anything, Null enjoyed drifting through an endless dark abyss, content to be in a world without light. So of course he was a little upset when the Big Bang happened and screwed up his plans to stay in sweatpants and binge Netflix and Disney Plus new shows for all of eternity. And when the Celestials started to create the universe, Null was unhappier than Garfield on a Monday. What he did next is actually pretty epic. Living in a world where there was actual light now, it gave Null something he never had before, a shadow. Null took one look at the dark shape of himself and thought, you know what, screw these jerks, and then created a sword of living darkness from his own shadow and called it the All Black, and went on a rampage where he ended up decapitating a Celestial. The other Celestials looked at Null and thought, yeah, we should have left him alone, our bad, and cast him back into the void. But of course by then Null had a new purpose in life, snuff out all light in the universe, so any of you with night lights, flashlights, or have the brightness on your phones turned up too high, be careful, because Null is probably coming for you. But if you're a comic reader, and you're asking yourself where Null has been all this time, that's a pretty good question. You would think that if there was some all-powerful entity who wants to make it so we have to fumble around in the dark when we have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, we would have heard by it by now. But here's how recent comics have the answer for that. When a time-displaced Silver Surfer went back in time to an era where Celestials roam freely and Ego the Living Planet was just created. Man, that's a weird sentence. Null was a serious threat to the development of the universe. Anytime a civilization would start to advance, Null would show up and wipe them out. Working with Ego the Living Planet, the Silver Surfer taps into the ambient life energy of multiple civilizations, and combining that with the power cosmic, hurts Null enough by conjuring a bright star right in front of him. It hurts Null enough to blast him across the cosmos, pew, but doesn't truly end him, although it does give the universe a chance to actually move forward for once. You know what, think of him like Pennywise, the evil dancing clown from It. Like Pennywise, Null was defeated a long time ago, but not destroyed, and after some time, he'll return to finish what he started. Doesn't he already sound scarier than Thanos? What's more terrifying to you? A purple dude obsessed with stones with an easy-to-make-fun-of chin? Or an unknown entity that devours light and has been around before the universe ever began? Yeah, we're definitely going with option 2 on that one. And we can't talk about Null without talking about his growing mythology and the important characters associated with him. In comics, you'll always have the question of what created what, and Null is no different. Sure, he's a primordial being, but where did he come from? We all know that he's an Elder God, and Demiurge is the entity that created the Elder Gods, so any story that involves Null should probably include Demiurge. And if we shift our focus to Demiurge for a second, we know that he created the Elder Gods, but then he was saddened when almost all of them became life-destroying demons. Can you imagine how much that must suck? Say you bring a few puppies who are all cute and cuddly home when they first start out, but when they grow up they become rabid feral and want to destroy everything in sight. How would you feel about that? You'd probably feel a twinge of guilt, and you think you'd fail as a parent. Fast forward to a modern time where one William Kaplan was having a hard time. Kaplan was a young boy constantly harassed and bullied for his homosexuality, as well as his fanboy enthusiasm for the Avengers. But William was destined for so much more than that. It was his destiny to inherit and become the omnipotent Demiurge. That's a pretty darn big responsibility for anyone to have, so it's not surprising when William's powers first became to manifest. He had a hard time controlling them. Of course, as with any superhero origin story, he was able to gain control and use his powers for good, eventually becoming the superhero known as Wiccan. At this point, though, you may be asking what all this has to do with the MCU. You're probably saying, hey, disembodied voice narrating this CBR video, why are you bringing us down this rabbit hole of characters we haven't heard anything about? And to that we say, just wait. Although now all of this may seem completely separated from the MCU, we think there's plenty of opportunity to incorporate all these characters down the line as the MCU's cosmic side slowly gets bigger and bigger. Wiccan is very important because he's a member of the Young Avengers, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a group of younger heroes working together on their very own team. Like the Avengers, the team has changed up its members from time to time. But if we're talking about the original lineup, the team is founded by Nathaniel Richards, aka Iron Lad. We don't have a whole lot of time to get into Nathaniel's backstory, but it's crazy. And for those who don't know, well, let's just say he's closely associated with Kang the Conqueror, who is another big villain we'll probably see in an MCU movie down the line. How do we say this properly? Let's say if Iron Lad and Kang took a DNA test, their results would be more similar than you would think. Okay, we can't keep a secret. Iron Lad is the younger version of Kang the Conqueror, which means Iron Lad has to live with the fact that he's destined to become one of the biggest villains in the entire universe. With Iron Lad forming the Young Avengers to protect himself from his future self, he recruits the shape-shifting offspring of both a Kree and a Skrull known as Hulkling, the super soldier-esque hero patriot, and of course, Wiccan. We'd also throw in Kate Bishop's version of Hawkeye in there, but since she forced her way onto the team rather than being brought on by Iron Lad, she rescued the gang from a tight situation, and she used that to earn herself a spot on the crew of heroes. And throughout this time, the formidable Pipsqueaks, aka the Young Avengers, fought a whole range of villains like Kang, Mother, and Laufey. So yeah, they may be young, but they are certainly able to get the job done. So can we all agree that a Young Avengers movie would be awesome? It's something that is rumored to be in development, along with the 1,000 other projects Marvel's working on at the moment, but we really think a Young Avengers movie could shine bright and be exactly what the next phase of the MCU really needs. And it's not like there hasn't been hints about it. The OG Clint Barton Hawkeye is getting ready to train Kate Bishop in her own Disney Plus television show, and Cassie Lang, Scott Lang's daughter, is destined to become the size-changing superhero known as Stature. Before, we would have counted Cassie's young age as proof there were no plans for the character, but then Avengers Endgame aged up the character 5 years, which now sets Cassie on a path to a heroic future. You could even make the case that Harley Keener being at Iron Man's funeral in Endgame is a hint that there's more to do with the character down the line. Maybe Keener could become this universe's version of Iron Lad, because there is comic book precedent for that, so it wouldn't be too far-fetched. It wouldn't be the first time Marvel has folded comic backstories into a different character, so why couldn't the MCU make Keener their own version of Iron Lad? All that we're saying is the Young Avengers have been set up enough where their inclusion wouldn't be super weird or forced, but rather something that has the proper backup behind it to make it work. If a movie of the Young Avengers isn't on the table, then just throw them a Disney Plus television show, because apparently everyone is getting them nowadays. Thinking about it, a television series might even be better for such a large ensemble cast to give everyone enough opportunity to shine. Besides, TV shows are better than movies now. So after that whole breakdown, how can Null, the Elder Gods, and the Young Avengers tie into the MCU? Well, let's go back to the beginning where we mentioned that Marvel Comics have declared Null to be the strongest villain in the entire MCU. This announcement comes hot off the heels of Kevin Feige's new job. For those that don't know, he's no longer the head of Marvel Studios, but rather, he's the Chief Creative Officer of Marvel Entertainment. That fancy new title doesn't just come with new business cards, no. It means Feige is involved in all of Marvel Entertainment, including movies, television, and comics. If Feige wants the comics to follow a certain direction, he's the man to make it happen. There's always been a gap between what's happening on the comic side of things compared to what's on the film and television side of things. But with Feige in his new position, that could change down the line. It all depends on how much Feige wants to keep the comic world and the film world separate. But we could totally see him building up to an uber villain in the comics just so they can introduce him into a feature film. Sure, there would have to be a few minor tweaks to fit Null and the rest of the characters into the MCU. For example, Null is the god of symbiotes. And last we checked, the symbiotes are busy chilling in Sony's Spider-Verse. Not the MCU, but that's an easy fix. Just like they changed Thanos' backstory to make him not courting death anymore, they could write out the god of symbiotes aspect of Null's character and just make him a creature that wants to destroy the light and is more than capable of doing it. We're expecting some big tease during the Eternals that's going to set up the next big cosmic threat in the MCU. It could be someone like Galactus, but we think Null might be the better choice. And once he's teased, the MCU can work on introducing the concept of the Elder Gods and Demiurge, which could lead right into the creating of Wiccan and his role in the Young Avengers. Heck, we could even see a situation where Silver Surfer is introduced first, teasing Galactus, and then have the MCU incorporate both Galactus and Null into their future stories. Can you imagine a storyline where somehow Galactus and Null are at war with each other and the Avengers are stuck in the middle? Now that would be something we haven't seen before and something that could certainly knock our socks off. Whatever ends up happening will be a turning point for Marvel Entertainment. Even if Null's big promotion into Marvel Comics' top villain doesn't result in his inclusion in the MCU, we'll at least know that Feige plans to keep the comic side and the film side separate. If Null is announced to be a new threat for the Avengers to face on the big screen, we'll know that Feige wants to use comics as a way to tease the big developments happening on the film side. Either way, we're ultimately happy, as long as we eventually see the Young Avengers, that is. We hope that Null can find his way into an MCU movie soon. We see him as the next big threat that could challenge the Avengers. But what do you think? Do you want to see a live-action Null? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more awesome Marvel content. As always, thanks for watching.